Hello everyone, this is Professor Choi again. Today we're going to be having a conversation about how's the economy doing, and we are in the month of September 2020. So I'm titling this Economic Report USA. I'm going to try to come up with one of these every month or so you can keep tracking my channel of how the economy is doing. And I'm also going to try to do it in Spanish and in English for anybody who's out there who doesn't speak one of the two. Alright, so let's talk a little bit about the most important number, which is GDP growth. GDP stands for Gross Domestic Product, and it's the number that we use in economics to try to figure out the size of the economy. It's basically the addition of all the things that we produce in the country in 1 year. Now, in the first quarter of 2020, our GDP in the US shrunk by about 5%, and then in the second quarter it collapsed by 31%. Now these two numbers, this one right here is not too bad compared to other recessions, but this one right here, you have to go back all the way to the Great Depression to see something like this. Now, the good news is that the third quarter is expected to be positive. We still don't have the numbers as of the day that I did this video, and as soon as those numbers come out, I'll probably come up with another video to show you. But basically, the good news is, as the economy started reopening on the third quarter, we expect this number to be positive, and we expect it to be fairly good. Now the problem is, things are slowing down again, and the fourth quarter it will probably not be as good unless Congress does something about it, and as of now, it doesn't seem like anything's going to be done until after the election. Now, I wanted to come up with a simple color coding system for those of you who don't quite understand the economy. So we separated into all these different sectors, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a green next to the stuff that is doing well, I'm going to put a blue next to the stuff that's doing like alright, and then I'm going to put a red next to the stuff that's not doing well. So this is just a few of the major things in our economy, major sectors in our economy. The industrial sector seems to be recovering fairly well. We're still having some supply issues in a few places. Mainly, I was reading a report the other day about, for example, people having to keep social distancing at the ports, and that basically creates a backlog of the way you can move stuff from one place to another. So even though the shipments are getting to the ports, the port is having issues processing that shipment, and therefore things moving from one place to another seems to be slowing down. And of course, the trade war with China doesn't help, and the fact that almost 1,000 companies sued the administration last month because of the trade war, that doesn't help either. So in any case, the industrial sector still seems to be doing well, consumer sector is doing great, and the technology sector is basically taking over. Everyone's now online, and as a consequence of that, computer sales are up, software sales are up, all these different companies that provide stuff online are doing fantastically well. Now, unfortunately though, a lot of those companies don't hire as many people as the old sectors do in the economy. So there are a lot of the sectors in the economy, especially anything that has to be done with physical and requires people to use it. For example, the airline companies are suffering. Air travel is down somewhere around 75%. And one of the reasons why ports and workers in the airline industry haven't yet lost a lot of their jobs is because the government passed the CARES Act, including the Payment Protection Program, which is basically a lot of loans to maintain a lot of these jobs. So a lot of these people still have their jobs, but the money will run out somewhere around September, and as a consequence of that, as I said, we expect the fourth quarter to be slower because there might be some layoffs coming up in November. Now, if you look at the overall services industry, some of the service industry is coming back, but some of the service industry is suffering a lot, especially small businesses with places like restaurants, for example. Hotels are pretty much in the red right now because occupancy rates are severely lower than they used to be. Parks are doing terrible, movie theaters are not doing very well, and AMC just said that they might have to declare bankruptcy in the next few months. Regal Cinemas is not doing well either, and Cinemark is not doing well either. Travel is not doing well. If you look at the airlines right now, they basically said that air travel is down significantly, and business travel is down even more. The energy sector is also not doing very well. because when the economy slows down, people drive less, we use less airplanes, and as a consequence of that, then we also use less fuel. Not only that, there is a change now where we're trying to move from fossil fuel consumption into more energy efficient or less fossil fuel technology, and as a consequence of that, the energy industry seems to be suffering. I expect though the energy industry to be okay in the next few years. This seems to be the worst it's going to be in a while. I do need you to understand, by the way, there's a lot more than just transportation for the oil industry. There's a lot of things that are oil derived. In any case, the unemployment rate is definitely getting better. And I wanted to give you a bit of a snapshot all the way back to April. So if you look at April, the unemployment rate in the US was at 14.7%, which is worse than the last recession that we had in 08-09, and worse than the one that we had before in the 80s. And you have to go back again all the way to the Great Depression to see numbers like this. Now the Great Depression, it peaked at around 30-something%, depending on who you ask. Or on the conservative side, some numbers say 25. But 14.7 is pretty bad compared to the most recent recessions that we've had. In July, the 10.2% unemployment is kind of like what we normally get in the new type of recessions, the more recent recessions. And now, in August it went down to 8.4, and in September it's down to 7.9. Those are all encouraging news. It basically means that the economy seems to be recovering as we open up the economy after the major shutdown in March and April. Now, if you look at payroll growth, and payroll growth is basically the amount of changes in payroll. So when there's a decline in payroll, it basically means people were laid off or fired. And when there's an increase in payroll, it basically means that people are back on payroll books for companies. Now, if you go back to April, there was a decline in payroll of 21 million workers. And that's how many people were either laid off or fired in April. And as you can see, that's why the unemployment rate was so high. Now, by July, the unemployment rate was getting better because we were kind of bringing people right back to work at a fairly good speed of about 1 to 2 million per month. By August, the number had now still going up at 1.4 per month. Again, look at the unemployment rate go down. But now by September, it seems to be slowing down. And this is basically what we have noticed, that April and March were pretty bad. The economy went down pretty quickly. Then it kind of recovered fairly fast, but now it seems to be slowing down again. In other words, the speed of recovery is no longer what they call a V shape. It seems to be doing, it did this, and then it seems to be doing one of these. All right? Now, inflation seems to be still very tepid, even though we are printing quite a lot of money. It's staying at around 1.5% year over year. Income is basically flat for the year, and in some places declining, of course. Now, some of the income has been supplemented by an increase in unemployment compensation and then extra unemployment compensation, but some of that stuff dropped in the last couple of months. So if you look at actual income right now compared to last year, it's down, but I'm just going to call it flat because at the end of the day, it seems to be kind of like at around the same level. Now, what's some of the good things? The CARES Act seemed to have done what Congress wanted it to do. And what Congress wanted to do was basically try to stabilize the economy. And that it definitely did. Now, the problem is that the decline in economic activity was so bad that it has already kind of sucked out a lot of that money from the CARES Act. And the Payment Protection Program, or the PPP, which is basically the money that was allocated to so that companies could basically borrow and keep people on payroll, the Payroll Protection Program. Now, what are some of the things that are coming in the next few months that we need to keep in mind? Well, the most important thing is, I don't know if you may have watched a video that I did in April, but basically the real thing that we have to take care of is we have to get COVID under control. And right now, it doesn't really seem to be under control. People are not out and about, and they should be worried. We need more action from Congress. Right now, in September, it doesn't seem like anything's going to be done in Congress, because Congress is basically at this point decided, let's run the election and then let's see how it ends. So somewhere around the second half of November, December, January, we'll probably see another stimulus package from Congress, but not anytime sooner. We're kind of at a stalemate at this point. COVID is not really under control. If you watch a lot of the videos that I did back in April explaining about COVID and things like that, one of the things that I said was it was going to become a bit of a rolling pandemic, and that's exactly what's happening. Some states are closing down, other states are opening up, and as they close down, they get the virus under control, but then as the other ones open up, then they start having issues with the virus, and then it becomes something like this. So you get it under control for about a month and a half, and then the virus comes up again, and then you open up, and then as you open up, the virus starts showing up again, and then you have to like slowly shut down some places. So it's going to be like that until we have again some treatment that it becomes very effective under the virus. So COVID is very far from what we call under control. If you look at the US overall, cases are on the rise again. Again, this is as of September. In the state of, for example, in the state of Florida, cases are down and they are not trending upward yet. It seems to be kind of plateauing at a bottom right now, again, as of September. It does seem like November will probably be an increase. Now, mortality seems to be getting lower, and this is definitely one of those numbers that we wanted it to be lower. And this is a big deal right here. Now, there seems to be better treatment in the hospitals, and there seems to be doctors and nurses, and our hospital system in general seems to be getting better at diagnosing and treating patients with COVID and patients that have COVID-like symptoms. Hospitalization rates are still too high. And this is the reason why a lot of governors and a lot of health officers are basically still kind of worried about the virus. A report came out the other day, and some states in the north have about 56% of the patients in their hospital are now COVID patients. And that basically means that COVID is still sending a lot of people to the hospitals. And you have to worry about that because it puts a strain on your entire hospital system. I want you to think about if a particular sickness sends more people to the hospital, then in a very basic way, what that means is that hospital beds are going to start filling up very quickly if your cases rise too fast. So you have to maintain that caseload under control. And if you ask me, and I've been saying this for quite a while, the best things that you and I can do as regular people is wear your mask everywhere you go, keep social distancing, and wash your hands regularly. I mean, that is the most basic, standard stuff that you and I can do. It is very simple, and it doesn't cost anybody anything. It's just, I mean, wear your mask everywhere you go, wash your hands, and try to keep as much social distance as possible. Enjoy yourself, but do those three things. All right? The good news is most people seem to be already following those instructions. Okay, so thank you to everybody who does. Now, I wanted to wrap it up by basically explaining that compared to what it could have been, we're actually doing fairly well. All right, so this year it's going to be a really bad one for the history books, but we seem to be getting out of it right now. All right, we seem to be at the bottom, at the worst time of a lot of the things that are happening right now, and that is good news for the future. Okay, so keep watching Professor Choi, and I'll keep telling you the economic news. Have a good one.